Hello, everybody. My name is Margaret Pennard. Welcome to my channel. You're on BookTube. We've got a Wednesday wrap for today, and I've got a pinned question in the chat, which is, what's the first book you're diving into from May? I've also got a little guessing game question, which is, guess how many books I have to wrap today? I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author and an eclectic reader, and that is what brings you to May of the Modern, right? So it is May. It is the readathon month for reading moderns written, published, translated between 1901 and 1945. And yeah, I've dived in with my first read, but I haven't finished it yet. So what do I have to wrap up today? I'll tell you in just a moment. Before that, I'm going to go through the chat to say hello to everybody. I saw RC in here earlier. Hello. Dreaming Truth author in here. Hello, hello. Shannon, as always, hitting the like button. Very nice. Thank you, thank you. And Richard also coming in to say hello. Hello, hello. And Anita just popped in. Hello, hello. So welcome. I'm going to reveal how many books I have to review. 1. So for April, I was reading a lot more. I had like 4 books for every week, right? But this past week has been super busy and I am feeling super drained. So couldn't even like muster the energy to read. There was a lot going on. I finished my Camp NaNoWriMo April challenges, which was a video every day. You can see that on my homepage on my channel. I finished the writing every day, which was a whole bunch of short story scenes that I'm not sure what I'm going to do with now, but it's a heap of writing. It's like 23,000 plus words. I had a 12-hour writing relay, which turned into just a 12-hour write-a-thon because we all wanted to be on each other's channels and support each other with Shannon and Andy and Emma. So that was lovely. And then Monday, we had the AWC updates for May, which meant the website and the merchandise shop is open. So lots of things going on that did not include reading moderns. I did get a good start. I did start my first reading corner sprint, but have not finished it yet because Twin Flute is actually pretty thick, pretty dense. But that is what I've been working on. So I just want to remind people, if they're not hitting their goals, if they're not hitting milestones that they expect of themselves, be kind to yourself. There's every season that I don't know what the saying is. To every time there is a season, to every turn. Anyway, you know what I mean. Don't be hard on yourself. And I'm very hard on myself. So that's great advice for me to take as well. Massive mug of tea helps that. Okay, so before reviewing this 5-star read that I have for you, I'm going to take you through some of the recommendations because it's still the beginning of the month and you could be coming here to look at which books would be best to pick up for May of the Moderns. So let me direct you to pop this up. This is the list I have on Bookshop, and I'm an affiliate for it, which means I get pennies when you spend on a book there. It supports indie bookstores in general and, you know, your local booktuber in particular for this one. So the list that I have made here is, I think, 47 strong, and it starts out with the most recent. So someone just mentioned they were surprised I didn't have Georgette higher on the list. So she's now on here. And I've got some of the books that I'm hoping to read myself. So I can't necessarily recommend them yet. This is the one, I Am a Cat by Soseki Natsume, that is on forever hold at the library. So apparently that one's very popular. Claude McKay, African-American, very popular writer. Haven't tapped into his work yet. Those were put up last year. Oh, look, it's one I have read. Okay, so let me take a breath. Whew. So when I look back at May of the Moderns, cat book, yes, Richard. When I look back at May of the Moderns and think, oh, I remember really enjoying that book, it is most often because I have done it as a buddy read. So The Octopus by Frank Norris is really flowery, prosy, sprawling is the word, just like the title. So it was kind of a chore to read, honestly. But I read it with Barrett Laurie, and I'm popping the link to our buddy read chat in the chat because it was super fun. It's always nicer to read a book with someone else. So yeah, that was super fun with Barrett. What else do we have here? Let's see. We had the war stories, which I put up here because Brian from Bookish had recommended some of these by actual soldiers, which was different. Ooh, we have Passage to India. So I'll pop our buddy read for that one in. This is one of the books that actually keeps coming back. Like I keep thinking of even years later. So definitely recommend A Passage to India by E.M. Forster. It's a lot about colonialism and otherness and communication. So I just thought it was really, really interesting to talk to someone about someone who is from a different culture as well. So I did that with Raina, and we had a lovely discussion. So that's in the chat as well. Bye, Shannon. Break over. Nice to see you for a little bit. The war novels. Let's see, my second page of recommendations. This one I'm reading this year. What else have we got? This is the one I just unhauled. Daphne du Maurier is good. Haven't read her yet. Oh, here we go. All Passion Spent by Vita Sackville-West. So this is also a buddy read. I'll pop it in the chat. But the reason I liked it so much and remember it so fondly is it's about a woman who is at the end of her life and sort of arranging her affairs and thinking about her family and sort of doing what she wants for once. And Vita Sackville-West's other work that I read was not so captivating, but this one was. So I liked that I could find something in her work that I really enjoyed. And then the last one I thought I'd put in here was already on the screen, The Enchanted April. I still have not watched this movie. I feel like I like my memories of the humor in the book and that the movie will overwrite those. You know what I mean? You know, when you watch a movie adaptation and like you can't remember the feeling that you had reading the thing because the visual is more powerful because we're human and like that's usually just how it goes. So I think I'm holding out on purpose, you know, just kind of a weird thing to say, but yeah. So anyway, if you want to check those recommendations with a little more time and care, there is a link. I'll pop back up. Okay, so enough May of the Modern stuff. Hopefully you know there's a Storygraph reading challenge. Hopefully you know there's a playlist where you can see all the people who are participating on my channel. And what did I read? So I read this 5-star book. Dum-ba-dum. Lady Violet Investigates by Grace Burrows, New York Times bestselling author. So here's the thing. I explained last time that I love historical romantic mysteries, however you want to put those three things together, because they combine so well 3 different genres that I really appreciate aspects of. I could get really technical with this, but let me say that well, I'll do it in an example with Grace Burrows' writing instead of trying to like get theoretical about it. So historical. Obviously, I'm a historical fiction writer, so those things make me make my ears perk up, and I get very impressed when I see someone else doing historical detail in a way that I go, "Oh, that was nice," or "I knew that, but she worked it in really well," or "I didn't know that. Ooh, I'm gonna tab this and look it up later." So the historical parts, just to give a couple examples that were really great. Um, Chapter 7, I highlighted, so I'm going back to look at my highlights in uh, Kindle. English locksmiths of previous eras had developed clever mechanisms that displayed how many times a lock had been set or opened, and one of those locks adorned my door. And I've never seen these before, so I don't know what they look like, but she has set up a description of it, the thing that we no longer use, at least I don't think so, in such a way that I can continue with the story. And I was like, perfect. Now I'm going to go Google that, or like ask Christy Stratos what it looks like, because I'm sure she has one. And another example I highlighted was chapter 9. But the female domestics were likely housed on the same floor as the kitchen. With the cooks and housekeeper to keep a watchful eye on them, the maids would also enjoy the warmth of the kitchen in winter and the ground floor's coolness in summer. It's like, oh yeah, people used to think about this natural ventilation because that's all they had, and that's how you would organize your sleeping arrangements, and especially with servants. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. She's just worked it in one sentence, and I understand, and I can continue because it affects the mystery because they're going in to search people's rooms, etc. So I really like that, and Grace Burrows does it really well. In case you didn't see my earlier reviews of her books, this is my fourth book of hers that I'm reading. One was a very old one called Virtuoso. It's, I think, her third book. One was one of her latest called Never a Duke, which is the 7th in a different series completely. And then one was book 4 in this series. So Lady Violet Enjoys a Frolic. And I picked that one up at my local used bookstore. So this one is book 1. And, don't go by the cover. I don't particularly like the cover because it's a collection of objects that make it look very feminine and frilly and old-fashioned and simpering. There's a locket, there's a teacup, there's a fan, there's a mirror, not mirror. Yeah, hand mirror. So don't go by the cover on all the books. I'm recommending this as 5-star because it's really good writing. And that's what I was going to say, the beginning of the series. So I've read 4 books now. I read book 4, but read book 1, and it didn't go back as far as I thought it would. So in this series, in the 2 books that I've read in this series, there's sort of a triangle happening, not a focus of the book, because obviously the mystery plot is the focus of each book, but the romance arches over in the series, and the triangle is present in both book 1 and book 4. But I don't see her meet the person that she's with in book 4, in book 1, which is intriguing. She's already been fraternizing with him. So that was a surprise. I'm very curious. I would love to have Grace Burrows on my channel. That's one of these you want to hear the backstory. So there's the cover. There's the series complications. There's the historical examples of what I really liked, how she did it. What else? I've got the style of writing. You heard a little bit with the historical detail, but the example of her witty voice. It's very voicey because the character speaks in first person. And one of the things that I highlighted that made me laugh was I had gone too far, applying logic to a situation that Sir Randall's plodding mental powers were determined to drag into the shadows of male conceit. And it's one of those sentences where you are being pulled along until you get to the end and you realize, what she means when she says pulled into the shadows of male conceit, meaning it wasn't going to be a rational discussion. It was going to be something that they were going to fight over so that the male could be seen as right. And she was like analyzing this during the conversation. So I thought that was very witty. Yes. And I say about the romance part, it's saucy, it's spicy, it's at a simmer, right? So book one, it has to have enough of a simmer, like not a rolling boil, but like enough of a simmer to keep you going, and enough action and enough tension in that triangle that you're not completely sure which way it's going to go until it goes. So I just think it's really good. And now I can't wait to read the books in between. The one thing I'll say, even though it is a 5-star, is that the mystery plots are not particularly my favorite in terms of tropes or topics. But inheritance and marriage are the stuff of a Regency plot. So what are you going to do? I do like Regency romances, so I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to be happy to do so. So I went and got the link for her series page, which I'll pop in here. I watched an interview with Grace Burrows as well, and I was particularly amazed to hear her debut story at a writing conference. So ask me if you want to hear about that. But she has like 90 titles or something right now, after about 10 years, 13 years, 9 years, something like that. In publishing. Started out in traditional publishing, but saw the writing on the wall, and now has her own direct sales. So I was just so impressed that, like, not only was she writing so much, she also had her eye on the business side. So anyway, Grace Burrows, a little bit of the getting into the weeds and the backstory of a now favorite author. Oh, Maggie's here. Hello. So she's deducing from the cover, perhaps. It was Miss Violet holding the teacup, wearing the locket, with the fan in the parlor. I really like that. It is a mystery. I love it. And Maggie says, bread day, canning days, and soap making days were miserable, and you worked for a wealthy family if they had that done by others. Oh, talking about servants and the historical detail. For sure, for sure. Bread day, canning days, and soap making days. I would say laundry days add to that list. Mondays, right? JC is here to say hello too. Hey, hey. Just catching up in the chat here. Yay, nice to see friendly faces. Jim, speaking of a friendly face, hello, hello. Let's see. So that is the only book I have to review today because, as I said, the weekend was busy. So that's the Wednesday wrap, and you've got recs. So I went over 4 recommendations that have buddy read discussions. So if you like getting deep into a book, those links are in the live chat, and you can always check my channel. They're all on my channel, to see what we talked about and why those are the ones that stand out to me in my memories as really, really good Maya the Moderns reads. I think I only have current reads left. So all that I was going to say other than that is that I have 8 current reads. I went on Twitter and I had a funny picture of my cat on all the books that I was reading. So I thought I'd just toss those up because it's eclectic. As I say at the beginning of most videos, I'm an eclectic reader. So we've got the May of the Moderns read, the Tin Flute. I have yet to discover what the Tin Flute has to do with anything. Maybe I won't ever. We'll see. Very good so far. I've had that book for about a year, not long. I think I just got it because Elizabeth at Bookends and Books was talking about it. So it's only like BookTube influenced. It's not sitting on my shelf for a while. The other ones that I'm looking at have, however, I'm rereading this, The Self-Acceptance Project, and a good chunk through at least. It's edited by Tammy Simon, and it's a bunch of different psychology/mental health practitioners talking about self-acceptance. I rated it 3 stars in 2017, which seems like a long time ago. And I was like, why did I rate it so low? And then I got to a chapter and I was like, oh, because there's a wide variety of quality. I definitely disagreed with one guy. So, yeah. So, take what you can, leave what you don't want. This one I've had for years, Water Damaged. I think I'll have to put this to the side. The first chapter was really, really good, but I'm honestly kind of afraid of it. This is Sue Monk Kidd and Ann Kidd Taylor's Traveling with Pomegranates. Yes, it was supposed to be a final read for People April, but I went in a different direction, and it just feels too closely emotional right now. So this may have to go back on the shelf, unfortunately, or the floor for now. And then this one that I've had for a few years, Jacqueline Winspear's The Care and Management of Lies, which is a standalone of hers about the Great War. Not a mystery, so a very different writing voice. And like I showed, I'm between a third and a halfway through. Very interesting. This may be the next sort of priority along with the Tin Flute. The other books I'm reading are impulse wise-ish. So bear with me. So if you were here over the weekend at all those live streams that I mentioned, you'll know about my book haul for Independent Bookstore Day. I've already started reading this one. Thin Places, A Natural History of Healing and Home by Clary Doherty. I think it's the Gallicized version of Doherty. And I've not gotten too much into it. It's about 2 chapters, the prologue and the first chapter. But it's intense too. But I was interested in this book because of BookTube, I believe. And I think was expecting it to sort of feel like Eileen McGreefa's book, because that's also a Gallicized name in a publishing thing in the recent publishing timeline. It's got a similar feel in terms of like dreaminess and theory and metaphor, but that one was about motherhood and strife and identity, and this one is about borders and time and trauma, I think. So, and using moths as like messengers. It's very interesting, so I'm excited about this one. I couldn't wait to start it. Babel, I haven't started yet, and Poverty, I haven't started yet, but we'll be buddy reading with Barrett, so those are still to come. And then the other 2 that are recent acquisitions that I couldn't wait to start either. The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, and not very far into that one, but it's super interesting. So far, it's been very science heavy and very research focused in terms of what he learned at the beginning of his career. But he does put in, and I talk about this in this chapter, and I'll go into more detail on this, and I'll reference this study here. So I know what's coming, which is a really nice way to do it. I don't know that I would expect a medical doctor of psychiatry to write so well, so maybe he had help. So yeah, so that's been really good. And the final impulse purchase, I saw this, I don't know, like 3 days ago, and could not help picking it up and starting it immediately. Those of you who know me will know exactly why, because look at that title. Who can say this title? That's the next challenge. Who can say the title of this book? And who knows what phrase is most often employed with? Yeah. Maggie says The Body Keeps the Score sounds like something I should read. Yeah, so far he's talked about victims of abuse and military veterans in particular as people dealing with trauma. He also mentioned, and I hadn't thought about this, the fact that in the 60s to 70s, we used to have all these asylums, state hospitals, homes for the insane, sometimes they were called. They're the stuff of fiction now, but 1960s, 1970s is when the, I forget what he calls it, psychopharmacology revolution, drugs started to be used for psychiatric purposes just that recently. And so as soon as those started being prescribed, people started going on with their lives instead of needing to be kept in asylums apart from society. And it was like, oh, it's one of those things like you're like, yeah, it makes sense. But the fact that it's so recent and the fact that it made such a big change hadn't occurred to me. So that was interesting. Not necessarily the point of the book, because I haven't gotten to like the meat of what happens in your body. But yeah, really hyped. Not hyped. It's from 2014, so it's been a long time. It's kind of like braiding sweetgrass. It's been out and it's like slowly growing because more and more people are like, wow, this is really valuable. So yeah, would definitely recommend it. Getting back to my last book here. The title is Wisht, as in hold your wisht, which means hold your whining. Just quit your whining. Creative Making in Uncertain Times by Kate Davis. And it says Davies, but I'm assuming that they say it the British way, Davis. She grew up, nope, that's the other book. I don't know where she grew up. I would assume Scotland if she's using the word. But let's see. Let me just read it out. Wisht. I-N-T. What does that mean? I think it means it is variably a verb, a noun, an adjective. Scots and Northern English dialects: to be quiet, to quieten, to hush, to remain silent. To haud or keep one's wisht is to be quiet, to hold one's tongue. Also in diminutive forms, wish, wishy, the slightest sound, the least whisper, the faintest rumor or report. Kate Davis asks how we might best enable and encourage our creative practice in the face of ambivalence, uncertainty, and doubt. At a cultural moment when it seems that creativity can be anything to anyone, Wisht poses a set of radical and redefining questions. What if, instead of breaking or disrupting, we made mending and repair the focus of our work? And it continues. The first chapter, not too far into that, maybe a quarter, she talks a lot about creative disruption, which is the phrase that people use for like tech companies that do something so totally new that the whole market lessons and forms and structures are changed. But she's like meditating on the fact that having shrines to people who disrupt things and break things in our parlance, like that sort of plays out on a bigger stage. And I've just read a book on sewing and mending and repair. So having that play out in the creative sphere is interesting. She's already shocked me in this book by having an art installation be someone who mends clothes, mending clothes, sit in an anatomy lecture hall. So she is juxtaposing mending bodies when they're dead so that the doctors can mend bodies that are alive later with mending of things that people normally throw away. And so it's like interrogating our values and that, what? So that was a wake up. Yeah. Creative making in uncertain times. So the Thin Places one is very recent, and she's talking about Brexit and the border in Northern Ireland. And this is also talking about modern things. She's just used the term literally can't even, but in a way that refers to something else, not her own description. So yeah, it's strange for me to be reading things that are so current and up to date because I'm the queen of old books. But yeah, I guess if I take little bits of 8 different books, I won't get too overwhelmed by all the newfangled things. Oh, wished. I feel like I have seen that word when I was researching the Scots of Nova Scotia, but I don't remember what it means. Yeah, there you go. She remembered. Way to go, Maggie. Yeah, so those are all the current reads. That's my haul from an independent bookstore day. All this stuff. And yeah, I'm just glad I remembered that I was supposed to do a wrap up today and put up a thumbnail because I did not remember that this morning when I woke up. I thought, oh, Wednesday. What happens on Wednesdays? So if you're in the same place and feeling a little overwhelmed, dinna fash. Don't fear. Be easy on yourself. Be kind to yourself. Maybe do some reading. Maybe have some chocolate. That's my solution. All right. Well, that's it for me today. I will go on reading some moderns and hopefully finish some of these 8 books before next Wednesday. I've also put up Friday. We have a productivity sprint because it's the first Friday of May. I think it will be more of like a quiet reading corner. So for anyone who wants to tune in 9 a.m. Pacific, I'll go for a couple hours then. Otherwise, I will see you next week. Happy reading, everybody.